So we're here with Dylan Helms from Microsoft. I'm Kevin Wade with IntelliSystems, and we had our lunch and learn today where we talked about end of life for Windows XP, but it's also end of life for Office 2003 as well as Windows Server, a Small Business Edition 2003. And that's mainly because one of the components of the SBE edition, Microsoft Exchange, is end of life next month. So in that vein, I wanted to talk mostly about Exchange Server, Dylan. Exchange is kind of, for those that are not maybe familiar with it, it's kind of the back end, what I call the back end of Outlook. You know, we're all used to getting email on Outlook and even maybe having calendars and contacts on Outlook. But Exchange is the back end of that allows us to share that, to sync it up with all our different devices, maybe share it, when I say share it to other users in the office. And so everybody has the same set of contacts, everybody can view each other's calendars, so those types of things. With this product being end of life, it's a time to make a conversation maybe about what we do from here. If you have Exchange now, I guess, Dylan, then one of the options is to potentially look at either buying a new Exchange server or even looking at hosting email in the cloud through Exchange hosted email. So that's two options. You know, and then somebody would say, well, why would I want to consider something like Exchange for email? Why wouldn't I just use like a free email service? Well, first off, I wouldn't recommend anyone do that. There's lots of reasons why, but you're going to sync all your different devices together. So let's talk about what Exchange Server does for the mobile device user, because I think we already know kind of what, with email and calendars and contacts, what it does for us on a desktop. But let's talk about the syncing with all our devices and also the mobile security issues that Exchange helps us deal with.
One cool thing with Exchange is it has there's a feature called Exchange Active Sync. What that allows you to do is essentially set a group policy for mobile devices. Okay. So, you know, just like you mentioned in your presentation earlier, the whole concept of BYOD is becoming increasingly pervasive in the business environment. You know,
bring your own device.
Exactly, right. You know, I already have these smartphones and tablets at home, so why wouldn't I bring them and use them for work if it makes my job easier? Well, the one element of risk that introduces is now you have all these different devices on your corporate network free to roam around. How do you regulate that? So Exchange Active Sync with mobile devices allows you to set certain permissions. So for example, you can say a device is allowed to access, you know, intranet sites when it's on a local network, or this device is allowed to VPN in and access this particular file share. Based on a case-by-case basis. You can even do things like shutting down the ability to text or take pictures on each of those devices to ensure they're being used properly for work purposes.
So, Dylan, more and more there are situations where using mobile devices in the workplace too are causing heartache for some companies. Some articles that I've taken a look at recently mention cases where, well, like in an HR situation, employees reading emails or during like lunch hours or even at home after hours. In some cases, if they're non-exempt employees, they've actually come back and sued their employer because for the time they worked overtime, so to speak, that's a concern. Being able to manage, you know, when you can use a mobile device and access that information that's at work is an issue. Also, I guess another concern would be if you have employees. We hear a lot about texting and driving, but using those mobile devices for various different things while they're driving, particularly in company vehicles, while they're doing company work, being able to manage how the devices are used. Coca-Cola was sued for $21 million, according to one article I saw, where someone was in a wreck, a salesperson was in a wreck, and injured someone while texting and driving. And I guess lastly, you alluded to it a few minutes ago, the fact that, you know, if that device gets lost or stolen, being able to shut that device down or to wipe it or even make sure that it's encrypted so that none of that information that's on the mobile device can be stolen or used against the company, or even create a security breach that could create a fine from a regulatory agency.
So absolutely, you're right in saying that all of those things introduce what should be an unnecessary element of risk into the workplace. So that's exactly what those policies exist for. You know, being able to configure a device to, whether allow or disallow access to particular information, even down to, being location-based or time-based, is extremely important because it paints that distinction between, what's on the clock, what's work, and what's not, in order to avoid those issues that, as you referenced, were experienced by some companies. Even some examples like the ability to, like you mentioned, remotely lock or wipe or even encrypt mobile devices is a huge boon because that prevents what could be a catastrophic data breach. The difference between having a device managed by Exchange ActiveSync that knows to wipe the data on it after 10 incorrect PIN entries could be the difference between an entire company succeeding or failing. To give a more specific example, something like a breach of HIPAA could incur fines of up to $1.5 million in scenarios if people know about the lack of security and choose not to act on it.
Thanks again, Dylan, for being here today for our Lunch and Learn. Interesting information about Microsoft Exchange and just some of the new things that you can do with it. It's pretty exciting. And it sounds like some critical things that people that use mobile devices, like most of us do, in small and medium businesses, this is a tool that you can use. And so I appreciate you being here with us. Thank you for being on our video, too, a little summary of what we talked about at the Lunch and Learn. Again, Dylan Helms from Microsoft. I'm Kevin Wade from IntelliSystems, and thank you for watching.